Doug Lynam, a former Marine and Benedictine monk, is now a finance expert blending ethics with wealth. A best-selling author and speaker, he helps people align money with purpose. All right, my financially intentional people. I'm so honored to have Doug Lynam joining us, and he has a very interesting story on how he became this personal finance savant. And I'll let him tell you, but a monk. I've never interviewed a monk, so this is my first time interviewing a monk, but just interested to know like your backstory from being in the military to the space that you're in right now. Welcome, Doug, to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Asima. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me on your show. Yeah, I've got great content. I was listening to your shows before. They're great stuff. So
thank you.
Yeah, so I've got a wild backstory. My resume, it kind of looks like it was a roller coaster designed by Salvador Dali on a sugar high, I think. It's kind of all over the map, really. But I grew up in outside Chicago in a fairly affluent family, but money got weaponized when my parents divorced. They used it as put their kids in the middle sometimes, and it gave me a really negative view of money and wealth in a lot of ways. And my brothers and I, we all rebelled in different ways. I eventually became a monk for 20 years. I took a vow of poverty to try to get away from the world of money and materialism forever. And I have a twin brother who ran off and became a homesteader, and then another brother who went and joined a grunge band. So we all took vows of poverty in our own weird ways, trying to basically thumb at our parents, doing the teenage rebellious stuff in different forms. But I first, after the Marine Corps, I went to officer candidate school with the Marines, and I trained with them and graduated at the top of my class. And then I thought that was going to be my career. And then I started doing a little more homework on the history of the Vietnam War and all things and the politics of it. And thought, yeah, we'll never do something stupid like Vietnam again. But I wasn't quite sure. So I had this nagging gut feeling, intuition said maybe this isn't the right career path for me, which was wise. I would have ended up in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I'm kind of glad I missed that bullet, dodged that bullet. But I also kind of realized that there was some unresolved anger issues I had in me, and that and high explosives were probably a bad combination. So I probably should look for a different career path than killing people for a living, although I love the Marines and I respect them and got a lot of great stuff out of it. But I then went looking for another path, like what would give me the same structure and the discipline and the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, all the things I liked about the Marines, but maybe without the killing part. So I had a bit of a spiritual awakening and then decided to go become a monk. So I turned my commission down and immediately went and joined a monastery, Benedictine, where I served for 20 years. Thought that'd be a great way to escape money and materialism forever, and a great way to really annoy my parents and find God and all the things. There was a real spiritual quest going on there at the time. But in an ironic twist of fate, about 3 years after I got to the monastery, the community went bankrupt because we all hated dealing with money. Like it was a thing. It was a taboo. Like I went there to get away from it, and so did everybody else. And it turns out that you can't escape it, even in a monastery. You've got to pay the bills. There's leaky roofs. There's all these things. At any rate, I jumped in and for whatever reason decided I was going to be the one who's going to solve that problem. But the good news is the bar was set so low, I couldn't do a worse job than what was already done before. So even though I was financially illiterate, like most people, my parents didn't talk about money, and talking about sex was easy to talk about money in my house by far. It was just the taboo thing, even though we had some, and my mom was a CPA and my dad was an executive, all these things, but we couldn't have honest conversations about it. At any rate, I was financially literate, went to a bookstore, grabbed every book off the shelf I could find on personal finance, and then it took me a couple of years to dig through all that and really learn the ins and outs of just the basics of how to get this community back on a solid footing. So did that, and then I was in a teaching order. So at the time I was the head of the mathematics department at a prestigious private school. And so I thought, we should be teaching finance to kids. So I did that and taught econ and personal finance as elective. It was fun. And fast forward about a decade into that, and I one day opened up the school retirement plan for a class project to show the kids how it worked. And it was a train wreck. It was an absolute nightmare, like everything you don't want. No fiduciary oversight, fees were high, funds performance was low, blah, 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 blah. And I went looking for another company to do a better job of it, and I couldn't find one. I felt like most of the major corporations serving schools and nonprofits are not doing an adequate job, particularly on the fiduciary duty front. They don't want to take it on. I launched my own investment advisory firm from inside a monastery to solve this problem, which was another kind of absolutely insane idea. And fortunately, I wasn't on my own for too long. I then joined a larger firm here in Santa Fe called Longview Asset Management. They took me under their wing and were very kind to me. And at that point, I realized the wheels were coming off the monastic thing it's a whole other story. But eventually I did leave the monastery to go become a full-time investment advisor. I was managing a portfolio of about $250 million in assets and did a lot of cool things. A lot of things I'm really proud of in that career. And then the really bizarre stroke of luck, this is just one of those weird synchronicities, is right when I launched my business, the New York Times did a 6-month expose on the problem of teacher retirement plans across the country, like a different full page spread. And I reached out to them on Facebook and said, hey, I love these articles, and here's what I'm doing to try to solve this pain point. And they got excited and did a big story on me. That hit the front page of the business section of the New York Times. I got a 2-book deal from HarperCollins, blah, blah, blah. And now here I am with 2 books, and I'm now a speaker, coach, author, all the things.
Wow. So that was a lot. So I just want to go back, and ask a really basic question, because I don't know the answer to this, but what does being a monk entail?
A lot of work. It's busy because you're running a whole community, and a lot of the monks were older and had a lot of health issues. So there was a lot of caretaking involved. Then there's just the daily practice of monastic services and prayers. And then you got a full-time job on top of that teaching, a full course load. So it's busy. Ironically, I have more time for contemplation now than I did, I think, when I was a monk, because I have more control over my time. It's just so many needs coming at you from all different angles. So it was good, though. I mean, it had its ups and downs, let's put it that way.
And it's interesting that you talk about you did that to run away from the money things. It blows my mind that your mom was a CPA, but talking about money was taboo. Like, I don't understand how that worked in that household.
Yeah, it didn't.
I'm just like, okay, she deals with money all the time. But it just goes to show you that people think that financial professionals are like money experts, and they're expert at what they do with money. Right. But personal finance is something that's totally different. And I like to tell people that because I think that there's a lot of shame around money, because people think that they're supposed to know money on this really, really high level, like down to a CPA level. But even though people don't understand it, in a way, I'm just saying that to bring up a point and to normalize the fact that personal finance is not something that is innate. It's something that you learn, and it's something that you have to really pursue outside of a professional degree in finance and all those things, because those things don't make you good with your personal money. Just to normalize the fact that it's hard.
It's hard. Everybody struggles.
It can be hard. Yeah. If you don't talk about it, especially. So trying to normalize those conversations and being like, listen, these people didn't have it figured out either. So we can start from a level playing field.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of generational trauma around money, too. So my parents had what I call money monsters. That's what I'm writing about. My new book is called Taming Your Money Monster, Nine Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram, which is a cool personality system, which we can get into or not. And what I realized is my parents, they grew up in very poor immigrant families. And so they had all this money anxiety. So they were very maybe tight-fisted about it and closed-mouthed about it because of all the anxiety that they had. They were really running on the corporate hamster wheel a little bit, trying to be successful, and they did a good job of that, and they deserve all the praise and kudos for that, and did many things wonderfully well. But when it came to money, there was the shame, and there was this one parent playing the one off the other. They both played poor. If I'd ask my mom for something, she'd be like, go ask your dad, he's got all the money. And you ask your dad, I give your mom all the child support and alimony, she's got all my money, go ask her. And you're kind of like, meanwhile, they're living in nice houses, taking fancy vacations, and like, where the money's going somewhere, but it's not going to us. So what's the deal? And I don't think they wanted the transparency, because I didn't want to show anyone else to see what the real cards on the table were.
I think that's super common. And thank you for bringing up like the money trauma and the family, the generational trauma around money, because that's super important. And I think that if you don't necessarily understand those things, it's hard to fix your own money story. And I am interested in talking about the Enneagrams, because I know that there are 9 of them, and I know that they all like it's like a personality type. But in understanding that, first of all, like understanding the backstory, then understanding how you show up is going to determine your relationship with money. So I'm very interested in talking about that. I still want to ask you a couple things, though, about your backstory.
Sure.
So you were at this monastery, it went bankrupt, and you knew nothing about money. How did you get to the point where you were able to take them out of that situation or get them out of that situation?
one step at a time. Let's just open the bills, start with a stack of bills and sort them, get the budget software out, start getting a budget, start figuring out income and expenses and what's your cash flow, and just basic questions that needed a lot more clarity that we didn't have. What really can we afford right now and what can't we afford? And one of the problems, and I saw in the monastery, was the sense that we're doing good work, we're serving people, we're, in our minds, we're doing God's work, whatever you want to call that. And so there was this sort of almost entitlement a little bit, like, well, we're doing good work, so everything should be fine. The money should just come. And it's, yeah, no, it doesn't. That's not how the game works, right? You got to have, and then there's this guilt, I think, about we've overextended ourselves helping other people sometimes. Okay, if someone comes in need, you feel like it's your obligation to help. And then it's, but it's not in the budget. Oh, it'll work out. We'll figure it out later. And then it doesn't work. Sat down to figure it out. So among other issues, that was some of the money monsters that were plaguing us. But ultimately, I think it was a real, what I would call an avoidant attitude around money in general. So I put people into at least, so we'll get to the Enneagram in a minute. As you mentioned, there's 9 kind of archetypes of personality, and we'll get into that. But I've layered on top of that what I'm calling the attachment theory of money, which is identical to the attachment theory of relationships for those who are familiar with it. But basically what it says is that there's 2 unhealthy ways we can manifest. We have struggles with our finances. One is being overly anxious about it, or being avoidant around it. And then that can manifest in different areas of our financial life in what I call the 4 pillars of finance, which I'm sure are intuitive to you, which would be earning, right? Mm-hmm. Saving, investing, and giving. So you got to master all 4 areas of your financial life: earning, saving, investing, giving. So I know a lot of people who are anxious earners, they make a lot, but they're avoiding savers. They don't save anything, or they might be squirreling money away for any day, but they don't get the investing, or they get the investing, but they don't get the giving. They never use their money as a tool for love and service. So it's like helping people get through all those different roadblocks, and then knowing how those roadblocks are going to show up according to your personality type, which is really, really helpful.
That's so interesting. And it is kind of like, okay, you're in this institution, you're supposed to have all this faith in like the spirituality and all of that kind of stuff. But it's like faith without works. Yeah. And it's just, but it is like counterintuitive. Like, we're doing God's work. We should always be provided for. But but what does that look like? It's so interesting.
Yeah, you don't get to abdicate your responsibility. It doesn't work that way. God's not going to work a miracle to solve a problem that you have the power to fix.
Right.
There's a personal responsibility element that has to be kept in check.
And so, just to clarify, how did you end up in the schools?
Oh, the community, the whole teaching order was a...
It was a teaching order.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was your full-time job on top of all your duties that you had to do in the monastery, and taking care of everybody and making sure that everything was running correctly and everybody was healthy. You were also a full-time teacher, and then you decided to teach about personal finance, and then you discovered the horrendous 403B system, which I'm all too familiar with. Like I said, I'm a nurse, but we also have a 403B, which we actually have a pretty good one, considering I know the nightmares behind 403Bs. And you barely touched on it, but like one of the biggest things is they don't have any oversight traditionally. It's usually some guy that knows the principal, and they come in, they sit in the cafeteria, and they sign these teachers up for these plans that have really high fees. They're typically front loaded, which means that the people get their money off the top before you make any money off of your investment. They don't have a lot of options. And then they lock you into these things where, especially if you don't understand, it's hard to get your money out of them. Those are the inherent problems around 403Bs. And 403Bs and 401Ks, a lot of people think that they're similar, but they have a lot less regulation around 403Bs because they are typically in schools or in institutions where people are just like, oh, like they should be working in good faith, but they're really not. So there's a lot of issues there. And I'm glad you discovered it. So you went from not knowing anything to having to teach yourself about finances to help this monastery run, to now looking at these books for the financial plans for these teachers. And you're just like, this is wild.
Yes.
Yes.
Wild. And the annuities, and they're pushing all these annuity products that people don't need. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah. But annuities are great things, right? Because you get a fixed income at the end.
Oh, but compared to what, right?
But it's just things that if you don't know, you don't know. And you're a teacher, you're going to work and you're thinking that you're investing. A lot of times you don't have any option. They do mandatory investing for teachers. And so you're just like, okay, I'll just do what they tell me to do.
Right.
And put your head down and hope for the best. Right. But it's scary out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very, very predatory, in my opinion.
Yeah. And were you able to, when you started your own kind of firm, did you take over handling the retirement plans for that school? And is that what you guys primarily focus on?
I primarily focused on that, and then I also branched out into individual wealth management, which actually is a lot more lucrative. It's a better way to make your living, to be honest with you. But I do both.
Yeah, I know that the climate has changed a lot around 403Bs. Like now they have to offer like an index fund option, but I'm not sure from when you started what other milestones you've seen or whatever changes you've seen implement like in that space.
Not a ton. It's still a mess. And in schools and hospitals, everybody needs to know that the real problem is getting fiduciary oversight. Who's got their eye on the ball to make sure that this thing is being run for the best interest of the employees? And without that strong oversight, then it inevitably starts being run in the benefit of the plan sponsor, whoever's administering the plan. And that's where things get really dicey.
Yeah. And it's just, what options do people have once they figure out that their 403B is trash? What can they do?
That's a hard question. That's a big question. Yeah. It depends on your organization. You can talk to your business manager. The other problem is that when you start bringing these problems up, then everyone starts like, well, who's to blame? And then people don't want to take responsibility for it. You get pushback from administration saying, because they feel like they're in the hot seat, and it can get politically very charged very quickly. So you have to tread lightly and be forceful about it, but also be like, hey, this would benefit you too and me, and wouldn't it be better? And without getting into the, oh, you guys are screwing this up terribly. That just doesn't go well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to come into that space and actually help them. Mm-hmm. And I love that it helps you transition into now what you're doing full time, and also just the opportunities. And I also often tell people, like, opportunities never come to you the way that you think that they will. Like, you really went into this monastery thinking that you were going to disappear from the world and kind of be able to just be in service and not have to think about it. And then just you taking that one step of being like, okay, somebody's got to run the books. And then doing all of these things led you to these opportunities to have this now wealth management firm, plus be featured in the New York Times and be able to be a published author and all those kind of things. I think it's incredible, but it also is like a testament of just doing doing the little things. Like my friend Jordan, he wrote a book about purpose. It's like the small P things. Mm-hmm. The small P things are things that add up to those big P. Like everybody always searches for this big purpose in life, and they think it's like this big leap, but it's about those aggregation of marginal gains. That's another way to say it, of those things that lead up to you really finding your purpose in life. And I think it's amazing what you're doing right now. And when you outline like all the steps that you got there, it was just like, it was you just taking these little actions to improve just your life and the life of people around you. And you were able to make such an incredible impact. So I applaud you, but also just to give people an example that it's not about these big actions that really move the meter. It's really about those small things that you do, but then you look up and you've made such an incredible impact.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly
right. So I love that. Let's talk about your book. Let's talk about the Taming the Money Monsters. Where did that come from? And talk about all the Enneagrams and all of that fun stuff.
That's a deep dive. Let's just jump into I'll give you a taste. This is all I can really do here. But essentially, my first book is called From Monk to Money Manager, and that's the subtitle is A Former Monk's Financial Guide to Becoming a Little Bit Wealthy and Why That's Okay. And so in there, I actually laid out the money monsters. I had 15 of them. They were loose. And it's actually the funnest part of the book in a lot of ways for me to write. But then I realized that they actually all mapped perfectly onto the Enneagram at one point. I was like, wait, this fits. And it took some jiggering. And then I realized there were some holes in my system. And I found a few more money monsters that I hadn't thought of before and realized. So basically, let me just give you the quick lowdown on the Enneagram and slow me down if I go too deep, but essentially your personality's got a bunch of parts to it, right? So you've got your nature, which is your DNA, and that's your gene expression. That's pretty fixed. But then you've got this nurture component of your personality. And the Enneagram helps explain a portion of the nurture part of your personality. So what it does is it explains how your ego defenses developed in childhood to help protect you from the biggest threats that you faced in your childhood environment. And so our Enneagram type typically comes in from 0 to 7 is when it gets settled in. But the way to think about it like this is, if you imagine when you're born, you've got a physical umbilical cord that connects you to your caregivers. But you have a physical umbilical cord that's cut right when you're born, but then you have a psychological umbilical cord that connects you to your caregivers. It allows them to do most of the driving of your ego as a mom and as a nurse. But that egoic codependence, the child has to individuate and differentiate and separate its personality. And so the only way for that psychological umbilical cord to be cut is by negative emotions, because the positive ones will reinforce the connection. And usually the negative emotions come in the form of the no's we get. Don't touch the hot stove. Don't kick the dog. Don't bite your sister. And usually there has to be some negative force behind it. And what we know from the neuroscience, and this is from the work of a guy named Jaak Panksepp, is that in mammals, there's really just 3 main negative emotions in the circuitry in the limbic system of the brain. And all of our other negative emotions are running off of that circuitry. And the 3 emotions are going to be anger, sadness, which is also shame. You could say sadness, shame, they're interchangeable, and then fear. So your Enneagram type was like, which of those 3 negative emotions did you get more of? Did you get exposed more to in your childhood? So that gives us, we call these 3 quadrants, or basically take a pie chart and break it up into 3 pie slices, and you've got 3 quadrants of the Enneagram. And then you can break those 3 quadrants into 3 subtypes. And so you basically have to take that pain, and you have 3 ways you could process it. So let's just say let's just talk about the sadness, shame triad, because that's where I fall into. And so you can take that sadness and you can either externalize it, which is like having a food fight with the world and how you think people perceive you. You can internalize it, and that's about teaching how you perceive yourself, or you can have both. And so there's 3 negative emotions and 3 ways to process them, internally, externally, both. And that gives us the 9 archetypes on the Enneagram. And that's why there's 9 there. And they've got lots of nuances. Like, you have to think of the Enneagram like a fractal. It has all this depth to it, and we're just playing at the top surface of it. So sometimes people have a hard time typing themselves because they're just looking at the top layer of it, and it gets very deep very quickly. But I'll explain just one type, mine, which is called the type 3. The nickname for them is often the achiever. I give them card metaphors. I call the 3 the race car, because we're always racing towards the next goal, the finish line, but we're often leaving our authentic selves in the dust. And so what it means for a type 3 is that we have this internalized shame about we feel ashamed about how we perceive ourselves. We have this externalized shame about how we think others perceive us. And that creates for each of the 9 types a unique unconscious fear, like your greatest unconscious fear that your ego defenses are trying to outrun your whole life. And so for a 3, the greatest fear that we have is being worthless. So we have this sort of sense of lack of self-worth that we're always trying to assuage through external validation. So it's look at me, look at me, look at me. Let me start the company. Let me write the book. Let me run the marathon. But we're so busy basically trying to people please the people around us, we lose sense of our authentic selves. Like, we're busy mass changing, wearing all these personas to get the accolades, but then you get the accolades for the persona, not for your real self. So it doesn't really satisfy you at the end of the day. So you just end up running on a hamster wheel, chasing. And so for the money monsters, for the type 3, there's 2. I call them the barrier and the blinger. So the money avoidant type 3 we call the barrier, meaning there's so much shame and anxiety around their finances, and they're equating your net worth with your self-worth. And it triggers so much pain that you just want to bury your head in the sand like an ostrich. You just don't want to look at it. So you get this really avoidant, don't want to open my bills, don't want to do my taxes. And that was certainly been me for much of my life and how I entered the monastery. And then the flip side would be the anxious type 3. I call them the blinger. And they're so like, okay, now they want to use their wealth to buy status symbols to gain social recognition, essentially. So look at the fancy car I have, look at the fancy watch I have, look at the bling I have to prove to you that I'm valuable. And so then money becomes this, you get on this hamster wheel consumption that can really decimate your finances if you're not careful. So that's a quick understanding of one type. And then we could go around and talk about others if you feel like it.
No, I love that. Yeah, we could talk about the other ones, but I kind of want to dive in once you know that. What do you do with that information?
Yeah, that's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Right? It takes a lot of work, a lot of soul searching, a lot of introspection.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes down, I think, to finding a spiritual practice that resonates with you, whatever it is that helps you ground yourself in the sense of the eternal. So you can find that spiritual grounding in yourself, so you feel that connection and find your self-worth intrinsically rather than extrinsically. That's for a 3. That would be the thing that the 3 needs to work on. And we all have a different thing that we all got to do. And there's no type that's better than any other. They all got their problem to deal with.
But how have you done that personally?
How have I done that?
Yeah.
A lot of contemplation, a lot of compassion. Like, it takes a lot of self-compassion, a lot of forgiveness, because you have to forgive the wounds. Well, I call it your sacred wound. It's that thing that cut that psychological umbilical cord, and you kind of need to dive into it. And what really was helpful for me was doing a trauma timeline of my childhood. And okay, where were all the big wounds? Where were all the hurts? And where did money come into play? Like, how did those things interweave and interlap? And how did I come up with this? Where did this sort of toxic, misguided perception of wealth come from? And so what's real and what's my projection on the money? What's the reality of it? And then what's all the unconscious programming I got that wasn't so helpful that I need to undo? And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of journaling. It takes a lot. Therapy helps. Get yourself a good therapist. Those things all. Mental health is key. So It's whatever your mental hygiene program for you. My path isn't going to be your path, but it's about finding that ability to get that emotional clarity. In me, it's just grounding in my heart and being more open and not so shut down. And there's a real path. So one of the things I'm really proud of the book is I've created an ego map for each of the 9 types. So there's an actual step-by-step path you can follow for your type to help you overcome these wounds and these traumas. And for a 3, what it means is, first we have to embrace modesty, right? We have to have an accurate self-assessment of ourselves, because what 3s tend to do is we either get stuck between, hey, cutie, we get stuck between like narcissistic self-aggrandizement and then nihilistic despair. Like, we're pulled between these 2 poles a lot. And so it's, okay, how do you see yourself accurately and not try to put all these personas and facades up? And then without pushing yourself down, it's not humility exactly, because that triggers the internalized shame. And you don't want to push yourself up, so you're inflating your ego to try to avoid the external. So it's like having that honest self-assessment, and then being able to have living with a little more. For 3s, what's really helpful is faith, but not in a doctrine or dogma. I'm not talking it's about having the faith to take the masks off and let your authentic self come through. So the most important spiritual practice for type 3 is authenticity. Is really being able to be your authentic self and present yourself correctly. First, you're not lying to yourself, and then you're not lying to others about who am I. And then when you do that, then you get validated for your true essence, if you will. And then it helps relieve that sacred wound of shame that we're always battling. Because you're being validated for who you really are, not for the masks.
Do you think that 20 years of being a monk helped you with working on your inner self?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It gave me all kinds of cool tools and tricks. So that was definitely helpful. And any grounding practice, it's important to find out what works for you. And we're all going to have our different traditions and tricks and techniques. But eventually, it really comes down to contemplation, compassion, and action. That's really the 3 things you got to keep in mind. How do I use contemplation to really dig into this stuff and see what's real? How do I have compassion for myself and for all the wounds that brought me here? And forgiveness for oneself and others. And then how do you put that into action? Like, getting down with the budget, getting in there with the spreadsheets, getting in there with your bills, and really putting right action into place is really key.
And how does your book help people find their own money monsters?
Oh, just by telling you what they are, basically. So here you go. And it's like sitting on a cactus when most people read about them. It's, oh my God, that's me. Oh no. But it can bring a real level of clarity and self-awareness when the light bulbs go on, that you're acting out these very predictable patterns, and then and how those patterns are causing suffering for you, and most importantly for the people around that you love. And so how do you interrupt those patterns and take what are the counter moves you need to make in order to overcome the emotional roadblocks you have to really building wealth and building the strong financial future that we all want to have.
I love that. What is like the biggest lesson that you feel like you want people to take away from your book, come away learning from your book?
I think that most of our money issues aren't really about money at all. They're really about trauma, like all this. And then what is the trauma behind the unhealthy money decisions that you're making. And so when you get behind that, money is just a tool for action. Money is the primary tool that we use to take action in the world. But it's really about having a right relationship with yourself so that then you can take that right action and are making prudent and wise financial decisions along the way, and not acting out of fear or anger or resentment or all these things, all the emotional triggers that come up around money that we then can spend our money in stupid ways. Basically, AM tells you where your blind spots are. And once you see them, then you can, without someone holding up that mirror to see where those are, it's like you're trapped inside your own ego. You can't see outside of it unless someone mirrors it back to you effectively. And so then you really realize how different all of us are perceiving reality from. We really have these unconscious drivers that we may be experiencing a same situation, but we're filtering it through this lens of our personality that sometimes is very helpful, but sometimes distorts things in unhealthy ways, and know what those are so that it isn't tripping you up in all areas of your life, but particularly in your finances.
I was going to talk about now financial therapy and dealing with financial trauma, I feel like has gained a lot of popularity. I think people are understanding that it's not just about the tools. It's not just the budgeting, because most people are just like, what is the budget? What should the investment plan be? I think people are really starting to understand you really have to heal those internal things that are going on. And so that's what was really not in my head when you were talking about, it's not about the money. It's really about you healing yourself first. And then money is a tool that's going to help in whatever you want. But in the meantime, if you don't heal those tools and you're dealing with you're bringing all of those traumas into your money. So it's just going to react to what's going on in your life.
You got it. Exactly right.
I love that. And I think the more people understand that, the more that they understand that, first of all, it takes a lot of self-discovery and understanding and forgiveness to really be efficient and effective with your money. And that if people can operate like that and don't think that they're failing because, once again, they don't know how to budget, it's not that. It's all those other things that are at play that are getting in the way for where you want to be financially. And I love that. I want to talk about your other book and how you say just to be a little bit wealthy, and that's okay. I understand that. That hit me. But I want to know why you put that as the subtitle of your book.
I wanted people, in both of my books, what I'm trying to help people do is have us, again, within whatever your tradition is, how do you bring the highest levels of spirituality into your financial life? How do you bring those two worlds together so that at odds and somehow at an antithesis to each other? I had a lot of intellectual and emotional baggage around money that I was trying to clear out, about feeling guilty about wealth, or feeling like somehow only greedy people care about having wealth. And that there's something inherently, particularly this was true in the monastery, was this sense that money is inherently evil on some level. There's the line from St. Paul says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I took that a little too much to heart. And when you dig into the actual Greek, it's way more nuanced than the translation we get in English. But the point being is that I misunderstood that for a long time and thought if loving money is inherently evil or bad, then what's the best way to respond to something that's negative or evil is to hate it, is to hate money and hate that world and want to push it away. And it's no, I'm more in the Mark Twain camp now, where he said, humorously, it's the lack of money that's the root of all evil. Or another way, someone said, money can't buy happiness, but poverty can't buy anything. It's really are stuck. If you don't get the finance figured out, you're hamstringing yourself in the ability to take action in the world and have a positive impact. And so how do you see wealth as a complement to your spiritual practice and a complement to living a good, wholesome, loving, compassionate life? And it's really so I was working out throughout the book in various ways this question of how do you learn to love money in a healthy way? What does that look like? And why is it okay to be wealthy? And why is that fundamentally a good thing that we should be striving for? And again, if you put it to your spiritual practice and then you're using it as a tool for love and service in the world, then you supercharge your motivation. I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing it for the people I love. I'm doing it because I've got gifts to bring out in the world. And one of the biggest frustrations in the monastery is we had all this talent and we had all these gifts to give, but we didn't have the money to put it into action. We couldn't have the larger impact that the world was calling us to because we didn't have the resources in our pocket to make it a reality. Helping people use that wealth, first of all, becoming financially literate, right? You talked about that earlier. It's so important to understand that finance is a foreign language and you have to learn it. It takes time. And then once you get financially literate, it's okay, now how am I using this for the highest good for myself and the world around me? And that's kind of what I'm playing out here.
I meant to ask you this earlier, but I think it's interesting, like the kind of giving up of the wealth thing and the wealth is evil perspective, especially religiously or spiritually. But isn't like a lot of the funding that monasteries get through donations and from wealthy people like giving?
100%.
I was just wondering, am I imagining that?
No.
So you can't give unless you have wealth.
Uh-huh.
But if you have wealth, you're inherently evil.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense whatsoever.
Okay, I was like, maybe I'm tripping in my understanding of that.
No, that was the delusions going through my head, or some of the things. I'll give you a story. So in the monastery, there was this one brother, talk about him in the book, I call him Brother Pius. And he was one of the brothers who refused to touch money or cash or credit cards or debit cards for years because he thought touching money was inherently polluting. There was something fundamentally debasing about it. And it was like, all right, how's that working out? And what it ended up doing, what I saw in this one particular instance, at least for a while, was if we were to entertain that somewhat diluted notion that touching money is going to create some sort of impurity in your soul, then by his refusing to touch it meant that other people had to touch it more often. So I got to do all this work so you can avoid, it's really just a money monster is what it is. And then create all this spiritual justification for why he doesn't want to deal with money. And if you want to use your religious tools to do that, you can find those justifications, but that's not really what their intent is behind. I don't think that's the real meaning of those scriptures. So what I found is that if you reject money for the wrong reasons, it can strengthen your ego and get a spiritual ego around not touching money that's just as toxic as somebody who's the Gordon Geckos of the world of Wall Street, the power-hungry money grubbers. It's like you're both acting out a money monster. You're just doing it on different sides of the coin.
Yeah, I think understanding that is the key to saying, okay, we know that it's there. We know why it exists. Let's just use it for good. Use it for what can benefit us and what can benefit other people. And I think when we have that reframe and just understand a lot of these things are just because of stories that we hear and what society is putting out to us, but they really don't make any sense. And when we can get to that point internally, we can really heal and be able to use money as a tool for the good that it can be used for. I really, really love that. But this has been so amazing. And I just want to know how people can get in contact with you and to get your wonderful books.
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is DougLynam.com. That's DougLyn as in Nicholas, AM as in Michael. So DougLynam.com, you can find all the resources there. My books are available from booksellers everywhere. Amazon, it's getting 5-star reviews. So the book I'm really pushing right now is Taming Your Money Monster, 9 Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram. And I also do public speaking and coaching. So if anybody's interested in those things, I'm also available for that.
I appreciate you and I appreciate your patience.
Sure.
What I have going on over here, I could tell you're a monk. You just handling it like a G. So I appreciate you, but I love your work and I can totally relate. And I know that a lot of people need this. They need to hear like that it's not because they are failing at these tools. It's because they need to understand fundamentally their money stories and how that's impacted them. And then they can understanding those enneagrams, they can use that as a tool to get to where they need to get to internally to be able to use money the way that it's supposed to be used in their life. So I really, really appreciate that.
Hey, you're welcome. It's great chatting with you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you, Doug. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
Okay. Appreciate you too. Have a great one. Be well.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.